Hey everyone, welcome. We'll just let people keep coming in. You can see that number still rising. Thanks for joining us for day 2. We're excited that you're here. Alrighty, I have some just general announcements to get started, and then I'll be introducing our presenter today, who I'm really excited about. So today we have sessions from 1 to 5:15. At 5:15, join us for day 2 wrap up and some door prizes. You have to be there to receive the door prize. So make sure you're not one of those people whose name gets called and aren't there to collect. Then come back tonight for special interest groups between 6:30 and 7:30. The special interest groups tonight are Women in GIS, GIS Leadership, GIS Early Career, Enterprise and Environmental. We also wanted to put a reminder out there that we do have NCAUG merch available for purchase to support the scholarship fund. I wanted to let you know too that all sessions are being recorded and will be made available on YouTube at a date in the future. Please be patient with us on this. It does take time to get the presentations uploaded to YouTube. So yeah, just welcome. Thank you for attending. This is 5 forces, 5 trends, and 5 skills critical to GIS and remote sensing in the 2020s. Our speaker today is Joseph Kerski. He's the education manager for Esri. Joseph is a geographer with a focus on the use of GIS in education. He's served as the president of the National Council for Geographic Education and has given 2 TED Talks on the whys of where, and I'm going to have to go look those up if those are online because that sounds very interesting. He holds 3 degrees in geography and has served as a geographer in 4 sectors of society: government, academia, private industry, and nonprofit organizations. He conducts professional development for educators. He's created 5,000 videos, 750 lessons, and 1,000 blog essays. He's authored 8 books, including Interpreting Our World, Essentials of Environment, Spatial Mathematics, Tribal GIS, International Perspectives on Teaching and Learning, and the GIS Guide to Public Domain Data. As a lifelong learner, he feels as though he's just getting started, and that's a crazy place to be starting, honestly, with all of those achievements. So he actively seeks mentors, partners, and collaborators. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Lucy, for the kind words, and greetings all. Glad to be with you today. Here are some big questions for a Wednesday morning. What do you want to see in society? What do you want our planet to be like? Also to think about, how can you chart your own pathway so that you can achieve your own goals and advance the broader, more noble goals of a more sustainable, happier, healthier, more resilient communities and world? I know that's kind of a couple of big questions to think about here as we start, but I just submit to you all that GIS is going to remain, despite articles to the contrary that you may have seen X years ago saying, by the 2020s, GIS won't be a distinctive sort of discipline because it's going to be integrated in mainstream IT and workflows in organizations. To some extent, I would argue that that has taken place, right? You've got more and more people in government agencies, nonprofit, academia, et cetera, that we'll talk about today in the 5 hours that we have together. Just kidding, we don't have 5 hours. Just wanted to make sure you folks are on your toes. In the short time that we have together, sure, GIS has empowered more people in organizations, right? It is different from in the past. Maybe some of you were around during the early days of GIS. I know I was. And it was sort of, oh, you need some data, some spatial data or some maps or some GIS information. Yes, go down the hall and to the right. Yeah, go talk to the GIS people. They're a little geeky and nerdy, but they're very helpful people and they'll help you. Now, to some extent, that's still the case, right? GIS is spatial as well as special, but one could argue that GIS has become more integrated as organizations feel that geospatial data is something that they need to serve. And so we need to have an open data portal, whether it's a ArcGIS Hub or something else, to serve our data. And we also need to, there's an increasing recognition of we need to empower more employees in different sectors of, let's say, a city government or a county government or a nonprofit or a private industry business or in academia, as I'll talk about today. So there's some elements of it being more generally available to people and empowering more and more people in organization X or Y. But also, it is still rather distinct. GIS, as you folks well know, because you're living and breathing this daily, it's a rather unique community in several respects. First of all, we like to see things from a holistic perspective, don't we? We like to, and this is what I would argue today, GIS helps people become more holistic thinkers, systems thinkers, thinking about the hydrologic cycle and the carbon cycle and the system of the lithosphere and the atmosphere and the hydrosphere and the biosphere and the anthrosphere, the human sphere, all intersecting and playing key roles in what we see in the natural world and in the human built world. So we like to look at things holistically. We still specialize, but GIS fosters that systems thinking and that system of systems thinking and the cycles thinking. Also, I would argue that GIS is a very nurturing kind of community, isn't it? We have conferences like this that, thanks to Lucy and others, we're bringing to you today with colleagues of mine and elsewhere, and I'm looking forward to learning from you over these sessions as well. It is a very geo-mentoring kind of community, right? We were geo-mentors before geo-mentoring was even a word or a phrase, right? Going back to the GIS core from 25 years ago on to today with geomentor.org and other ways that you as a GIS professional can connect and assist either the next generation of GIS professionals or schools or universities or tribal community, technical colleges, et cetera, other ways that you can give back to the community. You almost never meet anybody in geospatial land that is, I won't share my knowledge with you. I won't share my data with you. We're all wanting to do our part, and I would argue more than our part, to help others along the journey, because we're very passionate about this, aren't we, folks? Very passionate about this. So geotechnologies will continue as a relevant set of tools, data, and methodologies. We're never going to get to the point in our world where we're not asking the whys of where question, right? I like to think about it this way. What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? That's my mantra, and I'm sticking to it. In other words, it's not just where things are, right? It's why things are where they are, and what relationships do things have in relationship to other things. And even more importantly, the map is not the end goal, right? To map is not the end goal. I'll just say that right up front. Joseph said the map is not the end goal. Well, why? Because the end goal is higher and greater and more noble than making maps and putting your data on the maps, right? Oftentimes, colleagues of mine will send me their URLs or a PDF or something like that. It's, hey, Joseph, I've got my data on the map. Great, I'll say. And? Why do I say and? Well, because the goal is understanding. The goal is making wiser, smarter decisions, right? In our workplaces and in our communities and in our regions and in our world. The map is a very powerful, right? Spatial analysis is a very powerful set of techniques to foster that greater understanding, but getting the map, putting that data on the map is not the end goal. Also, as Lucy very graciously introduced me, I'm in education. So I'm always thinking about, okay, there's a lot of disruption in lots of sectors of society, as you all well know, education being one of them. Education is continually evolving, just like GIS is continually evolving, and it will emerge from the current and future crises in a innovative way. It's going to continue. Hybrid, face-to-face, online, all of those things. In fact, GIS, web GIS got a boost. I wish it hadn't taken a crisis, but suddenly many faculty at lots of levels, primary, secondary, college, university, lifelong learning, libraries, museums, all of a sudden, many educators said, I've never taught online before. I need to do that right now, like tomorrow. How do I do that? And how do I use some of these web-based tools, data sets, and perspectives to foster continued learning in this online or hybrid environment? So web GIS tools and open data portals and so on got a boost from that crisis and continues to shape education. So education is going to continue. And as you well know from being in the geospatial community, you are going to be continuing to be a lifelong learner. You'll have to embrace that, right? As GIS continues to evolve and as societal expectations continue to evolve. Now, why should you listen to me with all this? Well, as Lucy very kindly said, I have background in 4 different sectors of society: government, so those agencies that you see there. I worked at the USGS, for example, from the late Cretaceous to the Holocene, a long period of time. Well, maybe not quite that long, but a long time. So I actually care about geospatial data, having produced it at these different organizations. And now, as Lucy said, I'm on the education team at Esri. So those of you that know educators, work in education, or are somehow impacted because you've got kids in primary or secondary or college level, and you care about education from that perspective, or you care about education because you're a lifelong learner and you're interested in geotechnologies. If any of those apply to you, and it probably applies to everyone, some of those aspects, know that there is an education team here at Esri. We support schools, universities, etc., lifelong learning, after school clubs, 4-H, etc. How can we help them be successful with geotechnologies? More about that in a bit. We're not actually, you know how you go to some websites and there's a bot that appears that says, "May I help you?" We're actually real people. You know, I'm wishing that there was a touch-up screen with the conference right now so I could look like I'm 25 again. But the point is, we're actually real people, and we're very well supported by Jack Dangerman, because Jack really cares about education, and we are all educators. We care truly deep down about education. So in my case, and in a couple of my colleagues' cases on my team, we actually teach in several different universities or colleges sort of on the side. Because why? Because we care. We love interacting with students and faculty, and it allows me to test my own authored lessons, but it also helps me to see what people struggle with when they use GIS in an established discipline like history or mathematics or science, or they're actually in a GIS science program and they're learning GIS. Either way, I want to be of support to them. And as Lucy said, I'm also involved with nonprofits. Now, we're all about space and place here. So this is my homeland, Western Colorado behind me, the Colorado Plateau, Book Cliffs, the Grand Mesa, the Manco Shale. You can see way in the distance there is Utah. Those bluish hills are actually across the state line in Utah. So that's where I grew up. Here's where I hang out right now. Picture what would be the quintessential image you would like to share about North Carolina or wherever you happen to be right now. This is my picture of Front Range, Colorado. Just like North Carolina, a lot of people want to move there, right? Job opportunities, beautiful natural environment, lots of trails and places to go outside. I'm on my bicycle, but as you can see here, people are on horseback. This is the boundary between 2 major ecoregions, the high Great Plains, the short grass prairie in the foreground, and the beginning of the Rocky Mountain front, the Front Range. Another reason why I selected that is because I know a lot of you are climate and weather types, and that bank cloud, that lenticularis cloud that sits up there between October and April along the Front Range of Colorado in the lee side of the mountains. So you got the airflow going over the mountains, and as it descends, you've got that band of clear skies because the air is descending. And then the next wave, that's the trough, the next rise of the air forms that wave cloud that you see there. And so when it's sitting there for several days, stationary, we have fair weather in the winter. Very nice, you know, light jacket, shirts, long sleeve shirt, etc. Now, I want you to think for a moment about the geeky, nerdy things that brought you to the position that you are in right now, the pathway that you took, because we're going to talk about geospatial careers and your future directions in this space. I know we're among friends here, so I don't feel embarrassed to say this, but all of my photographs from when I was a teenager were of natural and human-built infrastructure. I have very few people in my pictures. So I would go to different places in the town where I grew up, getting that right angle, that perfect angle. Could have been on a stairwell in a bank. What kid does that? Think about the nerdy, geeky things that you do or did that nobody else cares about. Maybe none of your friends really get into why you're doing what you're doing. But embrace those things because you could turn them into aspects of your career. Another thing that I'll share, just in all honesty, is I actually made maps of made up places when I was a kid. So for example, my imaginary towns had urban renewal districts, bridges, hospitals, parks, industrial areas. What are these numbers on the right side of one of my maps here? I've got all the streets named. What are those numbers on the right side? Anybody, can we access the chat box, Lucy? I want this to be interactive. Oh yeah,
Yes, I'm
thanks.
looking at the chat.
What are those numbers in the right-hand margin of one of my maps?
Is anyone going for it? Oh,
Thanks.
directions,
They're address
addresses.
ranges. What kid cares about address ranges? What kid knows about address ranges? Right, the 3500 North block is Loduca Street, and the 4200 block, which is 7 blocks north of the 3500 block, is Holt Street. So again, think about your own pathway and what key moments. It could be a book, it could be a mentor, it could be a teacher, an instructor, some friends you had, experiences out on the landscape that brought you to this moment. I also would submit that you have a mental map of the places or place that you grew up and spent time with or in, of the vacant lot across the street from your school, right? The riparian zone where you hung out along the creek side. The very detailed mental map. And actually in many of my courses, I have the students draw that. And the point I'm bringing out there is, and with you, is that we're very tied to space and place, right? It's a fundamental part of our human existence, just like music or people, right? Place is very special. It's spatial and special to us all. So I don't want you to lose that in your day-to-day work of GIS. Remember, we've got an incredible planet here. And as Richard Louv mentioned in Last Child in the Woods, which I highly recommend, we're facing a bit of a crisis with what he called nature deficit disorder. In other words, kids not getting out there on the landscape, the natural landscape. Nothing wrong with soccer fields and playgrounds and so on and so forth. Nothing wrong with those, but encouraging students of all ages, but focusing on the young for the moment, getting out there into wild and natural places. That's really important for several reasons. One, if we want those students to actually have an earth ethic when they grow up and become decision makers, we want them to have valued experiences when they're kids. So suddenly they become the director of, I don't know, the North Carolina DNR, the Department of Natural Resources. If they didn't have a valuable, rich experience when they were a kid, okay, they may be going through the motions, but Richard Louv would argue that we really want those people to have those kinds of experiences because that's the kind of folks that we want in key decision-making roles about making decisions about the land, okay? So how do we build that into the educational system? More to come on that in the next 4 hours that we have together. Just kidding. In the next short time that we have together. I would also submit to you all that geotechnologies are not just a great career, right? Not just a valuable career, not just a career where you can have a lot of good colleagues like we have here in North Carolina and beyond, but it's actually essential if we want to solve the perplexing, complex issues on our planet in our 21st century world that increasingly affect our everyday lives, right? And as the last 18 months have shown, we have never before been so empowered, right? With open data services, with web-based tools, with the ability to create dashboards, right? Everybody on the planet has seen the JHU COVID dashboard and uses it perhaps daily. Why? Why is that the most popular dashboard ever been created? Sadly, because people needed it, right? People depended on it. Communities depended on it to say, okay, we're going to be able to open up the public libraries now, or we're going to have a mask mandate, et cetera, right? There's all kinds of decisions that were based on having that information available. And so that touches on the 5 forces that I'll talk about here in a bit. So geotechnologies are essential for solving the health, transportation, energy, water, social inequities, and all the other issues that are confronting societies around the world. Would you not agree? Okay. One of the things that I think is powerful is, for example, I have several things that I'm passionate about, as you do. One of the things I'm passionate about is walkable neighborhoods. So back in the not too distant past, when I was on work travel, and I have been to North Carolina numerous times in the past, I'd love to come back and hang out with you. Here's a couple of nerdy places I've been. 36 North 80 West. That's over by High Point. Why am I standing out in the middle of a field? Because it's the intersection of those latitude and longitude lines, the exact place where those things cross. We could get into geodesy. Was I actually 1 or 2 meters away from the actual point? But here I was in High Point, hanging out in the field with my suit coat on. What person does that? Here's another one. This is actually on a military base not too far away from Wilmington, 3478. I had to get permission to go onto that spot. 3478. Here's another one, is a bean field at 3678, east of Raleigh. So I love your part of the world. I'd love to come back there and hang out with all of you good people. I have a lot of respect for the North Carolina GIS community and have, again, supported in any way that I can the universities using GIS. I taught at the North Carolina School of Mathematics and Science twice. It's in an old converted hospital, as you may know, in Durham. Wonderful place. And they had me teach a mini GIS session for like four days there between semesters. It was a blast. Fascinating. Okay. Now, one of the things that I'm passionate about is walkable neighborhoods. So again, when I would be on work travel, I'd always make it a point to walk whatever neighborhood I happen to be in. And so here is a story map of walkability. And here, would you say this is walkable or not? You could put it on a ranking maybe. It's pretty walkable, Joseph. There's some sidewalks. There's some ramps. The condition of the pavement and the sidewalk is not too bad. There's some cracks. There's not any really cross traffic. There's some parked cars, but maybe I would put this a little bit toward the more walkable rather than less walkable. Okay, and there's some ramps. So if I was in a wheelchair, for example, I can get up and down those ramps. So, okay, so what is walkability and why do communities care about such things? Okay, so here's a couple of strings of text that I've got in my story map. I also have in my story map a survey 123, right? That's an ArcGIS Esri survey 123. Perhaps some of you have used it. You can crowdsource it, which ties to education as we're talking about today. So in this particular survey, I have 5 simple questions. Do you think it's pedestrian friendly or not? Rate the walkability from horrible to excellent. Tick all the choices that describe it. Where is it located? And do you have a photograph? So, okay, I've got a survey that I, the author of that survey, still have it active until you or actually till I, the author of the survey, turn it off. It's going to be active and you could actually participate in it right now. And then I have a web map, as you probably would expect, with the walkability yes or no symbolized. The green pedestrian symbols are deemed walkable by me or whoever's filling out that survey. And the hollow pedestrian symbols are deemed not walkable by whoever's filled out that survey. And so I can go to my live interactive web map, right, that's sitting up there in ArcGIS Online and go to one of those points and say, oh, well, is this point walkable or not? And what do whoever filled it out, what do they say about it? Now, in this case, it's not only walkable for, but Lucy will love this. It's not only walkable for pedestrians, this was walkable for kangaroos on that particular morning walk. Those tails on those things, they're huge. They're like those noodles that you see at swimming pools.
They sure are. Gotta be careful.
It was awesome. That was one of the best walks I've ever had. But below that, I have, you probably knew it was coming next, I have a dashboard. And I've got my results from my walkability survey in real time in this dashboard. So, okay, what does that mean? I've got over 500 points that people have collected. So I've got this whole power of crowdsourcing with a simple survey that's drag and drop, just like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, right? That I can use Survey 123 with. I also have a couple of pie charts in that dashboard. I have a live interactive web map. Right now, about 3/4 of the points are deemed walkable by the people filling out the survey. And I've got some characteristics down here in the sort of southeastern quarter of the dashboard. But here's a couple of points. A, you, I, others have the power that was used, the same tools that JHU used for the COVID dashboard at our fingertips with these tools. So in this case, I've got 4 tools that are all part of this ArcGIS platform. And I think the powerful message here is A, these tools can be connected for more power, for more communication, for more understanding. I've got a story map, right? And inside the story map, I have a survey 123. And then I also have a live interactive web map from ArcGIS Online in that story map. And then fourth, I've got the dashboard. So that's one message, is that you have access and you can create these things that connect. Now, you and I have tools that are single tools, right? That do 1 or 2 things. Even phone apps are not connected to anything else, right? And those are valuable as well. But I think the power here is connecting all of these tools together in meaningful ways, not just because you can, but because, again, if they enhance understanding. And the second message I wish to impart here with that example of the walkability is that the story map, the dashboard, the web map, and the survey, all told, each one of those 4 components took me about an hour to create. So in the context of education, 1 class period, basically. So in the course of 1 afternoon, I had created all of those pieces. So we're not talking days, weeks, months. Some of you remember the not too distant past where, hey, you want to learn GIS? Here's a set of manuals and we'll talk in a year, and you have to put your regular career sort of on hold to become a GIS professional. Now, having great respect for the GIS professional community, I'm not indicating at all that GIS is easy and that you can learn it in 1 afternoon, right? We still have, for example, our complex oblate spheroid Earth, right? It's not a perfect sphere. So we've got projection things to learn about. We've got how do I represent data on maps effectively in 2D and 3D, and so much more. Building a geodatabase and building those relationships, the topology, and all of that stuff that goes with GIS. So because we're trying to model our complex, ever-changing world, GIS is always going to be inherently complex. And one of the things that I advocate as a GIS instructor is we don't want students or others to just click, 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 and take all the software defaults, and then here's my result. And I haven't thought about the data sources or the methods or the tweaking of that, the overriding the default settings in certain tools. So what I'm getting at is, even though it's still going to be a learning curve, we have the capability nowadays of, hey, you can still be a wildlife biologist, you can still be a city planner and have GIS on your tool belt and not have to put whatever the main content body that you're passionate about on hold to fully immerse yourself in geospatial technologies. Now, true, we need a few people in society at different sectors of society, government, nonprofit, et cetera, that need to know a lot about GIS. But we need to know, I submit to you all, that we need to have more people in society knowing a little bit about GIS. And with tools like this, we're getting there. We're getting there because of web GIS. And that is a huge paradigm shift. Would you not agree? Because in the past, we had several clunky things. We didn't have enough hardware. We didn't have enough memory. We didn't have enough storage. GIS people were always big data before big data was even a phrase, right, folks? And it's like, oh, I want to share some data with Lucy. Oh, I can't fit it on this device and I can't email, and all those technical barriers. Not to say that we don't have technical barriers now, but the web has really democratized geospatial. And so that is what I'd like to get into here in this next segment is, okay, what are some forces that are related to this and why should I care about them? So geotechnologies, that center hexagon there, having it into the cloud is, I think, important for all the reasons I mentioned so far and a couple of others. First of all, these problems and issues on our planet do not stop at physical boundaries, right? They don't stop at ecoregion boundaries or watershed boundaries or ridges or mountain ranges or anything like that, right? They're cross physical boundaries. They also cross political boundaries, right? They're not just your community, your state, my country, yours, et cetera. They're global to local. And they also don't stop at disciplinary boundaries, right, folks? They're not just city planning or data science or business or economics or wildlife biology. They transcend all those disciplines. And one of the exciting things about the advent of web architecture to GIS is that, yes, it's great that you have your music in the cloud, right? It's great that you can access ABBA's greatest hits anytime, anywhere, on any device. ABBA was a band. Okay, just FYI. It's also great that you've got documents in the cloud, right? Google Docs, OneDrive, Dropbox. If you want to collaborate with someone on an article or a paper or a report, right? You put it up there so you can both work on it. So that's great that we have that capability, but I would submit to you all that it's even better that we have geospatial data, tools, models, et cetera, in this cloud-enabled environment. So we can solve these problems in our world and in our communities, and open up the doors in some ways so that we can get those economists and those language arts people and those others in the community, because we need a wider array, a wider diversity of people in the geospatial community to grapple with and solve these problems. And so I think that is again, a monumental shift in GIS, and it's even better than music and documents in the cloud. And then this whole geo-awareness, what I've got here in the sort of northwest zone there. Notice the spatial reference. Anyway, geo-awareness. People are aware of the COVID dashboard and navigating their way across campus or across the community with some sort of web app, or going hiking on a trail and using All Trails or some Trails app. Okay, so they're aware of these things and also aware of the issues that you and I talked about: climate, population change, biodiversity loss, et cetera. People are aware of that outside of our community now more and more. So in the not too distant travel days of my past, I would be on airport shuttles and in stairwells and, you know, in hotel lobbies and on university campuses. And people are talking about these outside of even our own community. And so the awareness is building, the enablement that people have to use some of these tools is building, the geotechnologies having evolved into the cloud is exciting. Citizen science, as I showed with the walkability, that's an example, right? And citizen science goes back to the 19th century with the birding community. Maybe some of you know birders or are birders yourself. The tree species, the call of the bird, the time of day, the plumage of the bird. I mean, they're very detailed. And now, oh, we can map that stuff too now, right? And remember, the map is not the end goal. The end goal is greater understanding of bird species or something like that. Or in my case, pine beetle infestation here in the Mountain West, or wildfire perimeters, et cetera. So we've got citizen science playing a big role in the gathering of data and then the understanding of phenomenon on our planet. And then finally, storytelling with maps. There are over, as of May 2021, 2 million story maps that have been created. Just ArcGIS story maps. What does that mean? It means that your family members, your friends, people that are outside the geo community are creating these for various reasons. They want to talk about cool places they've been to in their life. Or another thing that I would highly recommend is make a CV story map. So a story map of your CV or resume. Why? Well, it lets you immerse yourself in the story maps tools. It's fun. All of the information is in your own head. You don't really have to do any outside research. It's all your own story. So, and if you're in the present or future job market, it lets your future potential employers see that, oh, this person knows something about web GIS because here's their story map. I still have a traditional CV, as you saw in my contact info. You know, here's my traditional CV. I've still got that, but in my traditional CV, I've got a link to my story map. Okay, so sure, I've got this kind of standard stuff, but also I've got this. And I've got an essay on the Esri community site about reasons why and some good examples. If you're interested, just do a search for that, of creating a story map of your CV. And you can put in there some interesting things about yourself that an employer might, you can put some geeky pictures, like normalize your choropleth. The point is, I would highly recommend doing this. Again, for several reasons, but that's a fun and interesting way. And then every 6 months or so, when you want to update this, you can, oh, look at this. Here's my right hand is pointing at Denver. I love big maps, I cannot lie. But make sure that in your CV story map, you put not just photos and videos and stuff, but you include at least one interactive web map, right? That talks about, hey, you know, when I was over here, I did this, and I went and presented here, and I went to grad school over here, and I had an internship over here. So put at least one interactive web map. You can absolutely create a whole story map without an interactive web map in it, but I highly encourage you to put at least one interactive web map inside there, okay? So that's one way of seeing how these forces have been adopted, is you've got lots of these kinds of things out there, CVs, where I went last summer, et cetera. So, okay, if there's 2 million story maps alone, sure, wide variety of quality of these. So one of the things that I would say in terms of skill building for you in the geospatial community is to be critical of the data, right? There is no shortage of maps and infographics and dashboards nowadays, right? We are saturated with these. Where did they come from? What was their source? Who created it? How often is it updated? What scale was it created at? Just because you can zoom into 1 to 1,000, does that mean the data gets more accurate as you zoom into 1 to 1,000? No. So think about the scale of the data that's being used. You can zoom in and out, but there's still a scale that the data was collected at, beyond which you're treading on dangerous ground. For example, if you're looking at gas pipelines, right? So the point is, be critical of the data, and more about that in a bit. Now, another thing that I'd like to go into with you all is 5 trends in GIS. Now, just like other top 10 lists that might be out there, the 10 coolest places to visit in North Carolina before you die, the 10 coolest bands of all time, right? These are somewhat debatable. And oftentimes these top lists are meant to generate click-throughs, okay? So again, I invite, debate, comments, etc., either now or, you know how to get a hold of me in the future. But I would just submit that these are 5 key trends that we should pay attention to and that are really shaping our GIS world. First of all, 3D. We live in a 3D world, and it makes sense that we've got 3D analytical tools. We used to have 3D visualization, and we still do, but that's been around for about 20 years. In fact, probably the mainstay of many GIS courses, you probably remember this from your own past, the end of the semester, you would fly through your data. Ooh, that was a big deal, right? But graphics cards being clunky in the old days. But now we've got 3D analytical tools, which is helping city planning, right? Planning fire towers or fire mitigation, et cetera. And also this touching of the BIM, CAD, and AEC community, right? Building information management, computer-aided drafting and design, the architecture, engineering, and construction with GIS. So we've got tools, for example, that have come out as a product of the touching of those two communities, GIS and the interior mapping people, such as ArcGIS Urban. 3D in the cloud, nothing to install, visualize, okay, if I built this building over here, what would happen, what areas would be in shadow, et cetera. I'm not going to say that those two communities are, sitting around the campfire singing John Denver songs. He was a singer, FYI. Anyway, the point is, we have to have those communities working together, because if we're going to build, for example, a resiliency model for, I don't know, NC State, what if there's some weather event that occurs at 3 p.m. on a Friday? Where are the students? Where are the faculty? Where are what rooms are being occupied at a certain time in a certain semester? And it changes every semester. Where are the emergency shelters, et cetera? So if we're going to do that, we've got to have the interior spaces mapped in 3D, and we have to have the whole campus mapped with GIS as well. So same with a community, a city, not just a university campus. So how are we going to do that without these communities joining forces, so to speak? And also this whole idea of real-time data, the Internet of Things, right? You can get traffic, stream gauging stations, real-time wildfire perimeters, et cetera, pulled up in your GIS session. And much of that data is real-time or near real-time. Why? Because people want to be able to make decisions with the latest data if possible. And again, before this advent of the IoT connected to latitude, longitude, and web GIS, it was extremely difficult to do that because we were always with static data sets. We did the best we could with those static data sets, but it is amazing what we have at our fingertips. And of course, we want more, so more capabilities being developed. And that's pretty exciting to me because again, well, the Earth is a dynamic planet, right? We need to make decisions oftentimes with information that's changing by the hour or by the minute. Enterprise and web GIS, I hinted at this earlier, but the whole idea of empowering people throughout an organization with at least some geotechnology tools to have that on their tool belt is very empowering for them, but also for their organization to make smarter and wiser decisions. And then finally, artificial reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, machine learning. For example, we've got a business partner, Argus, augmented reality GIS, and they've got this capability. Well, hey, I'm going to connect to feature services, and I've got data for what's underneath the pavement. So instead of maybe using outdated, maybe in some cases paper documents still, or some old geodatabase that is not reflecting of reality, I've got this capability where I can go around with an ordinary smartphone and figure out what's underground. Now, remember, data quality matters. So how spatially accurate are those lines, those water lines, those sewer lines, those gas pipelines, et cetera, underground? But imagine, if this takes root, something like this could potentially save a city government or a private company lots of fuel, time, money, et cetera. This is incredible to me that we've got these capabilities at our fingertips. I would also argue that in the early days of GIS, we were replicating what we had that we had done for centuries, I would argue, with paper maps, maps on film, copper plates, and in times past, plates of silver, wood blocks, and going back to Babylonian clay tablets. Right? We were kind of replicating that in the digital world. Okay, now we've got our digital streams, we've got our digital streets, we've got et cetera, digital vegetation. And now we've gone beyond that, sort of phase 2 of GIS, where we're looking at things in new ways. For example, this accidents in space and time, looking at things with hex bins and extruding those hex bins to see, okay, I've got, like all projects, a certain amount of staff time, budget, and a deadline, right? We've all been there. So how can I focus in my county, let's say, my part of the world, on a certain set of intersections in my community that have a consistent hotspot, significantly higher number of accidents? Why does that matter? Well, because it's a serious issue, right? It's impacting people's lives. It's a safety issue in the community, and so on. So with those kinds of capabilities to create these space-time cubes, it's a good example, I think, and there are others that we could talk about if we had time, but it's a good example of phase 2 of GIS, if you will. It's going beyond just doing what we did before with just simply having our data in a digital mapping environment. So in this case, and I'm going to share this with you in the chat box, that we are going beyond just having in digital form what we used to do with paper maps or maps on film, et cetera. So let me go to the chat box and put that in there. It's a good example, I think. It's not the only example out there, but being able to create these hex bins and extrude them. Another thing that I wanted to share was, okay, that being said, Joseph, given the forces that you talked about, geo-awareness being one of them, is my city manager or my CEO or my university president or whoever I'm working with going to understand the value that I bring to the organization? We're not quite there yet. I still think you need an elevator speech. And on my Our Earth YouTube channel, I do have examples of me in actual elevators. This is pretty geeky, but I have about 10 short and longer speeches on actual elevators. So the point is, use your own words, of course, but if mine are of any inspiration, feel free to use those for ideas. But I still think you need that, because your city manager or whoever you're working with is going to come down to your cubicle or online in a Zoom session saying, you need to explain to X and Y in a 1-minute speech why your position matters and what value you're bringing to the organization. Okay, so have that ready to go. Or you may have, hey, we want you to give a 2-hour workshop in some aspect of geotechnologies to new employees or to decision makers. Okay, so be ready to do that, because I don't think we're quite at the geo-awareness stage where everybody understands why this is valuable. Because, hey, I've got Google Maps on my phone. Why do I need you? Okay, so I think we're making progress in that regard. And that's one of the reasons why my team and I are very passionate about education. Why? Because if we're getting students to think spatially at young ages, then those are the people that are going to be in your workplace, my workplace, saying, I've got some awareness level of geospatial technology. Now, most people in K-12 education using GIS, North Carolina and beyond, are using it in the context of science, social studies, history, some established discipline, and they're using GIS as a tool to help them teach weather, climate, population change, energy, the river system of North Carolina and the East Coast, et cetera, right? That's what they're using GIS for. In some cases, there is an established geospatial technology course. It may be in ICT, information communication and technology. It may be part of their CAD workforce set of courses, but most of the time it's actually in an established discipline like science, social studies, history, math, et cetera. There are lots of things they can do with these tools in those established disciplines, for example. And just as an example, hey, Joseph, what are you talking about? Do I have them build a geodatabase when they're 10 years old? No, but you've got these kinds of web mapping applications, for example. So if I'm teaching about, this is the Living Atlas World Water Balance app. If I'm teaching about climate and weather in different places of the world and how I want to build students' understanding of graphs and the x-axis and the y-axis, but also build some understanding of climate. If I click in for example, the Amazon, I'm not going to see a summer and winter, right? I'm going to see a wet season and a dry season. So I'm going to, as I pan my mouse across these precipitation bars, notice the y-axis here, 600 millimeters per year. Okay, that's probably more than North Carolina. Okay, but notice, September, October is the dry season, March, April, May is the wet season. So then, okay, I'm teaching a class. Okay, students, what's it going to be like in southern Libya? And okay, what do you know about North Africa? What's that big desert there? You see what I mean? I'm connecting it to some pieces that they already know. But here I've got whole swaths of the year, in this case, from February to the next March, 13 months with no precipitation at that spot, according to this data set. We always have to say, according to this data set, because we're always thinking about what data goes into my decision or my instruction with this particular web mapping application. We don't have a weather station over every square meter or under every square meter of the Earth's surface, right? So it's interpolated values. So it gets into a little bit about what's interpolation. How do we know what we know based on this particular data set? Okay, so then the next question logically would be lots of different things, but one of which is, okay, what kind of population does this kind of environment support? You think there's a lot of people living there? What if we added population density? What if we added major cities, et cetera? So being able to do this, and it's not just precipitation. If I want students to understand water, it's one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? Water quality and availability. I'm going to use a tool like this and say, okay, what's the relationship between precipitation and soil moisture or any of these other 6 variables? So short and sweet, running on the web, nothing to install, great instructional tool as an example. Another one that I love using is this Living Atlas Indicators of the Planet. So what if an instructor started every week with his or her class and say, okay, let's look at these. This is all built with the Experience Builder from Esri. And it's a great tool. It's kind of like the web app builder, but it lets you customize these widgets. And in this case, a lot of these are the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Hey, well, let's look at wildfire. And I'm not going to spend time given the limited number of minutes we have left. But what if every Monday I'm going to this page and I'm asking the students, okay, pick one of these tiles, or let's pick it as a class. And then let's talk about, okay, wildfire. Where are they? Why do they matter? What people are in harm's way with wildfires currently at this time? Right now here in Colorado, we've got a lot of smoke. Okay, maybe you have experienced that this summer as well. Anyway, the point is these actually matter. They're not just some concepts, right? So, okay, Living Atlas Indicators of the Planet. One more, and that is, here's the Wayback imagery, right? So you've got the swipe capability. Here's the North Carolina State Capitol building. If I could pan out a couple blocks to the west, I can see there's right at Hillsborough and Dawson Street, there is a building going in when? In 2021, I have on the left, 2014 on the right. So there's a building going in there that wasn't there in 2014. And this tool alone, I think, is fascinating because we can see changes over time. With this same tool, you've got gigabyte loads of imagery at your fingertips. You could use it to explain to somebody, hey, the Earth is changing because of human-built constructs and also the natural world. So this same tool, you could zoom to the chalk cliffs in England. You could look at coastal erosion. You could look at agricultural expansion in the US Great Plains or in the middle of Saudi Arabia. You could look at glacial retreat. You could look at urban sprawl. There's so many things you can use with this one tool, in level 1 being no login required, no sign in required. I've got all these images at my fingertips. Now, can I get a satellite image from 1899? No. Okay, but you've got 7 years worth of imagery at your fingertips. And also, if I was signed into ArcGIS Online, in this upper left tool right here, I could save it to an ArcGIS online session and then even bring it into ArcGIS Pro. Why would I want to do that? I've got this app right here. Well, that's what I love about many of these tools. I wish I could get excited about this, but level 1, you're using it just out of the box, no sign in required. Students are coming in or my colleagues are coming in 5 minutes and I'm going to have something to show changes in my community. Okay, done. But level 2 is I'm going to take these layers and put them into online or pro, and then I can do what? I can add additional layers to it, zoning, traffic, in this case, right, in an urban area like this. Or B, I then have all of those analytical tools at my fingertips. What if I wanted to see how much area has been urbanized in the last 7 years? Right, I can do some change detection when I've got those remote sensing tools at my fingertips inside, for example, ArcGIS Pro. So you've got 2 levels. You've got level 1 with any of these apps, using them just online like they are, no sign-in required, and then level 2, digging deeper. That's what I love about this. And because they're scalable, you can teach about a lot of different themes and topics and so on. So again, folks, I want to say that the web has changed how many schools, let's talk about K-12 education for a moment, have adopted GIS. Going from about 750, this just USA alone right now for the moment, to about 8,000. So we've gone up by an order of magnitude because of the web. So again, about 95% of schools are using just ArcGIS Online. It meets their needs, nothing to install, etc. 5% are actually using Pro, Community Analyst, and others use Survey 123. They use story maps. They teach with story maps. They also have their students create story maps. So there's lots of ways that this is being used. Again, mostly in established disciplines, but sometimes in geotechnology, computer science courses. And a few schools are actually having their students dig into the coding behind all of this. They're using some of the labs on the developer.arcgis.com site and have their students actually dig into some coding. Cool. Now, what about the university level? One of the things that I'm really passionate about is deeper understanding of GIS in education and broader understanding. And this goes for society too, but let's just focus on education for the moment. Deeper understanding. GIS is not just learning ArcGIS Pro 2.5, okay? Again, those are means to an end, a greater goal. I want people to understand that GIS is a platform, right? It's a means of communication. You've got field tools, you've got communication tools like dashboards and story maps, et cetera. You've got analytics. You've got connectivity to other tools like R, the R statistics package, or Power BI. So GIS is not just this sort of niche thing that's disconnected from everything else. So the deeper understanding of GIS. And then secondly, the broader implementation and understanding of GIS. So one of the things that my team and I are active in is promoting, and we can't do this alone. That's why we need your help as the community, promoting GIS in a school of business, in a civil engineering department, in a history department, in language arts. So beyond geo-enviro planning, we're not going to ignore our own peeps. I mean, you know, I'm a geographer and I came up through that community, and I know many of you did as well. But this is too valuable to be in 1 or 2 departments on a university campus or a community college campus, right? It's just too valuable. If you're teaching business and you're teaching supply chain or risk management or optimal site location, why wouldn't you use a tool like this? Well, for one thing, they're not aware that there's, or they are aware, or, oh, I had that in grad school, and yeah, that's over in the geography department. Go talk to them. They're using this stuff, but not me in business. Well, why aren't you using it in business? Well, how do I do that? So starting with something like Business Analyst Web, you've got all this data at your fingertips, demographics, consumer preference. Who owns 2 dogs and 2 cats? Who owns more than 2 dogs and more than 2 cats? Who has multiple pets and they own a vacation home? Oh, so maybe I'm going to use that data to figure out a hypothetical site for my new pet sitting business. That's actually one of the lessons that I use when I introduce this to business faculty. So getting them into some of the tools, but more importantly, getting them to think spatially and their students. Okay, we've got just a few minutes left. So before more questions and comments and so on. Thanks, Jay, much appreciated. But folks, again, my team is like 15 people. We've got thousands of universities globally that we're trying to nudge, tap on all the windows and doors and see who's interested in terms of geotechnologies. We also have multiple tens of thousands of schools globally. So we can't do this alone. We have to work in partnership with you all. all y'all, as they say in Texas. Ustedes, vous, tú, okay? All of you. It's us working together to, hey, maybe it's your kid's school. Maybe it's a university where you're an alum. Go talk to, again, outside the box. Most of the GIS is still in geography, planning, and other departments. We're starting to see some adoption, though, in business, health, data science, civil engineering, and digital humanities/history. Those are sort of the low-hanging fruits right now. But as you folks well know, because you're in the geospatial community, this could be a tool for really anyone, because everyone in some discipline and in some aspect of that discipline is going to ask the where question and the whys of where question. Now I'm going to skip through 60% of my story map because I want to skip down to, I've got some student examples. I've got some World Economic Forum reports about future trends in the workplace that might be of interest to you all. But you've got that URL for my story map that I posted in there earlier. But one of the things that I wanted to share here right as we close is, again, another list that's debatable, and you may not agree with this top 5 list, but I would submit that these are things for us to chew on as a community, the top 5 skills as we go forward in this decade. Be curious. You may not have expected me to say that at the beginning, but when you think about asking questions is so key to the success in GIS, right? Asking good questions, that geographic inquiry model, asking a geographic question, acquiring data, assessing that data, doing analysis, making a decision based on what you just did in your research project or in your production project at your county government, let's say. And then that probably leads, it should lead, it often leads to additional question, and the cycle continues. My cartographer colleague here at Esri, Charlie Fry, once said, a good map teaches you to ask a better question. A good map teaches you to ask a better question. I love that. And asking questions leads to tenacity. Final.aprx, final2.aprx, really final.aprx. That is my final project, Friday night at 10 p.m.aprx, right? The point is, right, you've all been there. You've renamed your project or your MXD or whatever it is numerous times because I've got to get this to work, right, folks? So you're tenacious and you're asking good questions. And that's really one of the main challenges to people teaching with GIS, in all honesty. It's not the technology. When you look at some of the games, the digital games that students are playing, I observed some students using animation software, Maya animation software, because those students wanted to be filmmakers. So they were very tenacious. And that Maya animation software was 10 times more complicated than anything we ever had in GIS in the past, in my opinion. It must have had 300 icons on that graphical user interface. But the point is, the challenge is, it's an inquiry-based problem-solving thinker's tool. It always has been a thinker's tool, way back to Roger Tomlinson, in the 1960s in Canada. The point is, it's always been a thinker's tool. And that's challenging to teach with. And you're also using a professional tool in the classroom, whether it's a university classroom or a K-12 classroom. So those are the challenging things. It's not so much the technology, especially in Pro, you've got all the analysis tools sitting in one box called tools. I mean, the interface has become a lot more intuitive, and then every tool, it's like, okay, what's your input data layer? What do you want to do? Do you want to adjust it? I mean, they're just so much easier and more intuitive than in the past, all wizard driven. Being able to work with data and being critical of it. I know this sounds super boring. Joseph's data book and data blog, to be honest, right? This sounds super boring. Why? Because this spatial reserves, I'm going to go to this tab here, is something that I think might be helpful as you work forward, as you influence colleagues around you. But it came out of a book that a colleague and I wrote for Esri Press a while back called The GIS Guide to Public Domain Data, which I know sounds kind of boring, but it's all about where to find data, how do I know if it's any good, and what about societal issues like location privacy and other things. So in this ongoing weekly updated blog is all about those exact things. Where to find data, how do I know if it's any good, and then what about societal issues? Being critical of data is a fundamental theme of this blog. And some of you have seen my posts on the North Carolina GIS listserv. Occasionally I'll say, here's a new essay in this blog. Here's everyday examples of being critical of data, some of which are geospatial, but they're fun and I hope they're instructive. George Mason University, simple Chinese fast food chain. Interesting. I thought George Mason was a major research institution. Okay, what about this? I found this in a catalog. Oops. What's wrong with this picture? Now, in fairness to the catalog, I and a couple of colleagues wrote and said, you know, in this case, the image orientation really does matter and you really need to flip this. What about this one? We talked about the Internet of Things. Some of those feeds occasionally are in error. Now, I know it gets hot in Texas, but this is really hot, really windy, and it's like Noah's flood precipitation rate. The only thing that's normal is the pressure. So if you weren't critical of the data, your interpolated surface would have a big peak on Cleburne, Texas. Last one, I thought I was a pretty big Fab Four fan, but some of these aren't even songs. A Day in the Sky, Penny Lance. Penny Lance is in my ear. This someone's misspelled playlist. It's not an album at all. Be critical of the data, including, and I would argue maybe especially, mapped data, because mapped data has this sort of air of authenticity, doesn't it? And nowadays, anybody can create a map and a mapping application. So for example, we've got ArcGIS Online. Thousands of layers get put up there every day. Jay and I and my colleagues, there's no Esri person saying, you can't put that data there. It's a completely open platform. So some of it has metadata, some of it has a little bit, some maps look good, but there's not much metadata. And that's why there's the Living Atlas, because it has more rich metadata. Does that mean the Living Atlas data is perfect? No, because remember, we're living on an imperfect sphere and maps are representations of reality. They're not reality. They're very good representations, very useful representations, but all data has quality issues. And so I really want people to be critical of data, including spatial data. So I think that's one of the key skills that I'm trying to get people to think about, being able to work with data and be critical of it. Okay, we're running rapidly out of time. So number 3 here, know your geographic and geotechnical foundations. Remember this sort of diagram I was drawing with my hands? I think that a few people need to know about geodesy, the shape of the earth and how do we represent, and really get into map projections and things like that. And more people need to know a little bit. Now, so for example, when I work with the business faculty, I do have nudge moments, teachable moments where I say, you know, okay, at some point you're going to be doing some sort of commerce study in the Arctic Ocean. I mean, as sadly things open up, and you're going to need to care about the map projection. You're not going to want to use Web Mercator for your Arctic study. Why? So we get into the reasons why. Adaptability. Perhaps some of you can relate to this. The most treasured times in my career have been when I've gone to international venues, working with colleagues in different countries around the world, teaching and learning, in my case, in Geo-Enviro GIS. So be willing to go outside your comfort zone regionally, but also in a discipline. So if you're at a conference like this one, go to some track that's totally outside your wheelhouse. You'll meet some interesting people. Maybe you'll make some new friends. You'll find out about their methods and what they worry about and what they're concerned about. It's just very enlightening to do that. Keep challenging yourself to go outside your comfort zone on even a conference. And then finally, good communication, as I mentioned earlier. Do you have that elevator speech at varying lengths that you can give to that person on the airplane, that CEO, that board of directors, your dean, your provost, et cetera? Now, folks, I truly believe that this is an exciting decade. Yes, we've got some problems to solve. We all agree. But you folks are what gives me great hope for the future. You're very smart people. You're innovative. You've got good data at your fingertips. You've got a long history in North Carolina of serving really fascinating and amazing data sets for people to use. Now, way back when I was at USGS, I went over to the NC1 map office. I mean, even back then, it was amazing. And nobody else was doing that anywhere else in the country, to my knowledge. So you're innovators. So we've got good data. We've got good people. We've got good methods. We're thinking critically. And so we're going to get there. We're going to get to this more sustainable, happier, healthier, more resilient world. There's going to be some challenges, to be sure. But I truly believe that wiser decisions will be made. And you folks have a key role in that pathway. Comments, questions, concerns?
I think Jay's been getting to some of the questions that have been popping up in the
Oh,
chat,
thanks,
which is
Jay.
awesome. Thank you, Jay. He's provided some links that people have asked for.
I noticed here, if I scroll up, you actually don't have the URL for this whole story map. Remember, I skipped about 70% of it, but I wanted to put a lot of content in there so that you folks could actually dig into this on your own time. You could be emailing me Saturday night. Joseph, I'm looking at your story map.
No, that's great. Yep, I can see you've shared that. That's excellent. I think, yeah, definitely what you're saying about just broadening the use of GIS kind of to some non-traditional disciplines. It's helpful to us all, you know. You can have that moment of, wait, like this is my domain, like I don't want other people to do it, but it's really that like teach a man to fish scenario, and it, you know, definitely benefits all of us, I think, at the end of the day. If anyone's got questions, post them in there. I've got a question from Sierra. What kinds of things do you do at USGS? I would love to work there someday.
Yes, I was in the National Mapping Program, and touching on the evolution of all of this over time, I was in the building that all of the USGS publications were stored. Every map, every book, going back to John Wesley Powell's exploration of the Colorado River. I mean, there were some fascinating things in there. Where's that collection now? It's mostly digital. There is a physical copy of all of that stuff over in the National Archives, but guess what? That 17-acre building that I worked in, there are no maps in there anymore. Why? Because you've got ArcGIS Online. Hey, pull up the USGS topo layer or the historical topo layer app. Now, probably like you, I have a mountain load of paper maps in my own work office and in my home office, right? Some of you probably all of you can relate. There's nothing wrong with that. And I also would advocate that, you know, when people use apps, navigation apps on their phone when they're out in the field, it's actually good to understand how to read the landscape and how to use a paper map, because at some point your technology will fail, right? Or you won't have cell reception or something. And maybe your life could actually depend on you finding your way back to the vehicle or to the visitor center or wherever you happen to be starting your hike. So it's all about, you know, what I talked about earlier, rich and deep experiences out in the field and being able to read signs on the landscape and in the sky. But anyway, that's where I was in the National Mapping Program.
Excellent.
Hey, thanks,
Yeah.
James. Yeah, that CV as a story map is fun and really powerful. And it's a nice way for your, you know, or your colleagues' application to sort of maybe float to the short stack, if you know what I mean, because not everybody does it.
Cool. So as we have some more questions coming in, I just have a little bit of housekeeping to do. So I see most people have their full names in Zoom. If you're after continuing education credits, please update it so that it is your full name. We can't give credits to, you know, Map Awesome 123. We've got to have your actual name. We do have a 15-minute break from 2:15 to 2:30, and we have some more great presentations at 2:30. Let's see if there's any more questions coming through. I'm not seeing anything. Thank you so much, Joseph. This has been fantastic.
Well, I hope some of these messages resonate, and appreciate the attention, folks. I know you're busy people and there's lots of different things to choose from in your daily lives. So again, if there's anything I can do or my teammates can do, my Esri colleagues can do to be of service to you, to be successful with geospatial technology, that's what we're here for, and to look forward to future interaction with you all.
Thank you so much. This was such a treat. Everyone should see too, there's an exit poll that's just popped up. Did you learn something in this session? For me, it's a yes, definitely. So I'm going to answer that now. Thanks so much, Joseph, and we will see you all back at 2:30. Thanks, everyone. Bye.